was a little bit like, you would say, man, those rich kids, you would think, they're all stuck up. Maybe a lot of them were, but maybe a lot of them weren't.
Yeah,
and it's like, hey, you grew up and you kind of generalize, the whole class of, well, that's not for us, because that means that, you're not living like Mother Teresa. So that means you're not holy. And I don't think that was the way we were supposed to live.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Clover Hill Family Ministry Podcast. I'm Charles.
I'm Melissa.
And I'm Shay Smith.
And Shay, so last episode we started this March Money Madness talk.
Money Madness.
Right? We walked through values to instill in our kids concerning money and budgeting and even personally attacking debt and just the big significance to all those things.
Right.
And so today, what's our plan as we continue the finance talk?
We're going a little bit more in the weeds and breaking it up in different life seasons and stages on what to do with your finances, but really all to have the one goal of making your money work for you.
Oh yeah.
I like it. Make our money work.
Yeah.
Nice. And we still got your guy with us.
Yeah, my main squeeze. He's
Come
still
on.
here, Mike Smith.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah.
In your
Couldn't
exact
say
same
no.
outfit.
Literally couldn't say no.
So cool. So you just said we're working through we're breaking it up into the different stages. What are the stages we're going to talk about?
Yeah, we're going to talk about young adults.
Okay.
What do you do with your money? The messy middles, your 20s through
Early 40s.
Early 40s.
Around
Cool.
there.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hit some retirement years.
Love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll try not to put anybody to sleep during this. So
No,
trust me, I listen to the podcast in the gym. So we got to
That's what
bring
I
the
do too.
energy
That's
Yeah.
what I do
and we'll
too.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Cool.
right,
So let's
so-
get going, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
start out with let's hit with young adults.
Cool.
Okay. Well, we'll recap from the last episode, but hey, young adults, this is where, it's the most valuable to start early, and you need to start on the right, with the right foundation. You got to get out of consumer debt. You got to attack it with a vengeance. All the things you would hear if you turn into like the Ramsey show, the stuff you hear in church growing up, which is gazelle intensity. Get rid of these people that just want to stay attached on you like a leech.
Like subscriptions and
Oh my goodness, how many subscriptions do you guys have? Every month I'm like, hey, that's $10 that way, $20 that way, $100 that way. It's like,
Adds up.
it adds up. It adds up. But if you can get out of consumer debt and if you can do the big things right, I kind of say it like, don't major in the minors. It's funny to me to think about somebody clipping coupons at a kitchen table in a house they can't afford.
Yeah.
So it's like, look, you can do the little things right, but if you mess up the big things, like, man, what are you even
It's
doing?
really hard
So
to bounce back from
just
that.
to give you some rules, some general guidelines, I think would be good, which is, I think whether it's your rent or your mortgage, keep your housing costs to 25% of your income.
That's good.
Don't let that get out of hand. Now, depending on who you listen to, will tell you, like, if you do a 15 or a 30 year, there's nuances to it. Either way, we know the goal here is to create margin in your life. Stick to the 25% rule there. So that way you're not majoring in the minors, which is trying to clip coupons to make your mortgage payment work, right? And then another one is cars. These are the two big things. When you're young, it's going to be, you're coming out, you're going, hey, I got my job. This is great.
It's usually car before.
Yeah. I mean, the car hits you even in high school.
Yeah.
We were talking about this last episode. And, there you may have some help from your parents, maybe not.
Yeah.
I had a mixture of that. But, you're driving around maybe in the hoopty. You get out and you get your first real job and you're like, man, I deserve.
Yeah.
What do I deserve? And you go out and, it almost makes you nervous where people buy cars that are, almost 100% of their first year's salary. It's crazy. I tell you, if you can, go get value. And value to me is almost like a Toyota Camry, a Honda Accord, a Honda Civic. Who are you trying to impress?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? What are your goals?
Yeah.
If your goal is to get followers, maybe you go get, lease up, a luxury car. But if your goal is to build a strong financial foundation for the rest of your life, maybe you can swallow your pride and get something that you can
Man,
afford.
that's really good. Hard to hear, but
It's tough.
to hear,
It's tough. I see, I'm in construction management, so I pull up to a job and, for most of my career, I'm pulling up and I have, one of the humblest cars in the parking lot. I mean, and it almost makes me sad when I know, hey, there's subcontractors pulling up in $100,000 truck, and I know they're not making $100,000, and it makes me sad to think of how much money this is, hurting them. And hey, I don't know their personal circumstance, but I know the trends and the numbers, and I go, this is it's almost like an epidemic of greed.
So is there a figure you said with rent or mortgage 25% no more for car? Is there a figure?
I really like the rule, and I'll give you all my reference material for the show notes here. So a lot of my stuff is probably just plagiarized, but I try to pick out the wisdom.
No, if you cite it, it's good. You're good.
Yeah, it's I love for a car 20% down. You should be able to pay it off within 3 years, and it should be no more than 8% of your income.
That's great.
So between your housing and your car, now you're at 33%, and that's tough. And believe you me, you can walk into a mortgage broker's office or something, and they'll underwrite you for a lot more. So you walk onto a car lot, and they'll say, "Oh, let me see what payments you can afford," and they'll approve you for a lot more. You have to be the steward of your resources.
That's real good.
And I think that ties back to, a lot of our upbringing and what we're at now, which is, you're stewarding, resources that have been placed in your hands. Yeah. And what is your goal with them?
Yeah. And figuring that out before you're going to get the car or before you're going to go look at houses, because that is a terrible feeling when you're young. And when we started out, there was so many things. It's like,
it was so hard.
I mean, as we talked about in the last episode, it's like, okay, you're of age now, but yet you don't know so many of the life things. You know cursive, but you don't know how to pay taxes, right? So it's like, you don't really know before you walk in, because they'll know how to switch stuff around. And they're good at their job.
Oh, they'll have free Chick-fil-A. They'll have Dunkin' Donuts sitting there. Yeah. And you think, you're getting treated like a celebrity. Yeah. In the meantime, they're swindling you.
Yeah. And even that, the simple rule, the 8%, like, that's great. Like, man, I wish I knew that when I was 18,
That's good.
And I would just tell you, that's for your value car. That's, the most important thing that you have, starting out is your income. Like, that's going to be your wealth building tool. So it's important to get to work, and it would be easy for me to jump on, there's other guidance that would be, just go buy the hoopty for $2,000. And I go, it's important to me that employees be able to show up to work on time and ready to work.
Yeah, you don't want a car that breaks down every other week.
Yeah, so I think you need something reliable. Yeah. So of course, if you can pay cash for a car, but that's not everybody's situation. So that's kind of giving you grace to play inside the boundaries that you need to be in.
You said tackling consumer debt, but a lot of early 20s come out with a ton of student debt. Yeah. Any specific advice on how to attack that?
Yeah. And first of all, I class that over into consumer debt. Okay. It's basically anything outside of your house, home mortgage. And I would tell you some good advice that I've heard is, when you're in college, you're living, at least this is how my college was. I'm eating pizza off a countertop. I'm scrapping. I'm eating ramen noodles. I'm just grinding it out. Maintain a little bit of that hustle. You're getting, I call it, you get your first big boy paychecks. This isn't intramural refereeing or babysitting.
It's a real job.
This is a real job. Yeah. And it's like, hey, you can immediately, I remember getting my first check, and it wasn't much, but I was like, man, oh my gosh, I thought I was in a rap music video or something. I go, hey, if I can,
you acted like it.
I had fun, but I go, look, and remember, some of this is lessons hard learned. Of course, of course. I had a couple bar tabs I wish I didn't have, but I would say, hey, if you can keep the hustle that you have, don't go out and immediately buy more than you need. Your work, you could justify in your head like, hey, I need all new wardrobe. Do you? Like, how much do you need to get by? And then the rest should be tackling your debt with a vengeance.
Man, that's good. And we talked about budgeting in the last one, but I think it's good before we leave this young adult age group. Just as practical as you can get, and not getting too confusing. If you take, just again, here's my income, okay? Of this lump, 100%, what gets allocated to what?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so you have your 25% to housing, and you have your 8% to your car.
Cool.
Well, what else do you have in your life? Now you have your spending. So what else can you do with money? You can spend it, you can save it, and you can invest it. I think now we need to talk about what to do with the money after you're done tackling your debt, because the first thing you're doing is you're surviving, you're getting out of this consumer debts. That means basically everything, all your margin is going towards tackling consumer debt. Once you're out of that stage, now you're assigning each dollar that comes into your account, you're giving it a purpose. Some people call this the army of dollar bills, right? And I love that analogy because you really want your money to go out and take prisoners and come back with money, right? How do you do that? You need to get an order. You need to know what your process is going to be. I personally, after looking at a lot of stuff online, I really like, it's called the Financial Order of Operations. We'll attach that to the show notes. But it's basically just giving you a process. I would tell you just really simply, most people will tell you, you need to get your emergency reserves back up. So, you're not living life too tight.
What is that? Like how much?
Yeah. So as you're working, that usually equates to a 3 to 6 month of expenses. And I would tell you also, I like the guidance of having your deductibles covered, because things can happen, and we know we got young kids. You said one just nosedived off a shelf, right?
Yeah.
So
I had to get a new wheel on my car last week.
There you go. Life happens, right? Life happens. Emergencies happen, and you have to plan for those because you need margin to do the rest. After that, it's taking advantage of everything Uncle Sam allows you to take advantage of. The first thing would be at your employer, getting your matching. That's free money.
Yeah.
So for your 401k specifically,
Yeah, so this is free money. I mean, where else are you going to go out in the market and get 100% return on your money? Right. If you get a match, that's money that you're leaving on the table. Go get your match.
So as simple as it is, young adults, start your 401k now.
Oh,
and you're saying put all that, they'll get matched, put everything in.
I'm saying get anything that they're matching you. That's free money that you'll be leaving behind.
Yeah.
How much do you need to invest out of that remaining margin that you talked about? I think it's 25% of your income. So this is after you've gotten out of consumer debt. Now you're talking about investing. 25% of your income needs to be going into investments. And there needs to be an order in doing that, and the order needs to be taking advantage of the free money, right? Getting your match, taking advantage of Roth IRA opportunities. We're going to talk about that later with, pre-tax versus, post-tax money and all that stuff. But, there needs to be an order. Please click and download just so you have an order of where to put your money. But this is the game plan. You sit down with your spouse and you say, we have a game plan. It's already assigned. It already has a purpose. There's no question. And then I would also tell you, it's important to spend some. Once you chase out of gazelle intensity, they talk about switching over to intentionality. And I think it's okay to, release a little bit, live a little, make sure you go on a vacation, you're in this season once, and it's okay to give yourself permission to do those kind of things.
Yeah, that's good. Even one more thing about young adults, a lot of young adults looking to get married and start a life together. Would you have any advice as far as how much to spend on a ring for your income, or what to prepare for, just merging accounts? Any tidbit there before we move on to our messy middles?
Sure. Well, I think communication's key. I talked about in the last episode of hey, I don't want to get there, win or lose without Shay. So to me, there's complete transparency with joint accounts. That's not even a question to me. So she needs to know where all the bodies are buried. She needs to know all the login stuff.
Wait, what?
Right. She needs to know everything. We sit down, we go over it all. Wait. I think that's important. As far as guidance on a ring purchase, that could be very subjective. I've heard good guidance in that it could be a month of income.
Yeah.
So, you say that's generally 2 or 3 paychecks worth. I think that's good guidance.
I think Michael Scott, he did 2 years salary. You remember that episode? It was a good ring.
She lucked out at his expense. If
Michael Scott did it, it's good enough. I would subscribe to that. But yeah, no, I mean, that's, it's going to be very personal. I think I actually followed that guidance. I think it was about 2 or 3 paychecks, which was a month and a half salary.
That's great.
And I was happy with that. Mm-hmm. And look, There's gonna be.
See? I'm happy.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
There's going to be seasons to upgrade things, and I think that it's all in its due time. I tell you, even with a wedding, not everybody's lucky enough to have in-laws that pay for your wedding.
Right.
It's a day. It's an important day, but be careful.
It's not your whole life.
Yeah, it's not your whole life. What you shouldn't be doing is jeopardizing your future self for that. And I think even myself, like if I'm a friend and they're having a wedding and I would feel guilty, them going into, gobs of debt to throw a 1-day party, for me to enjoy them getting married. So I would just say like, hey, everyone's story is unique, personal finance is personal, but try to avoid debt, as at all costs. Stay allergic to debt when you can.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our messy middle years, 20s, 30s, early 40s, things that we're considering, like we've established families, maybe you're a little bit more established in your career, house purchases, you're really thinking maybe about retirement coming up, those things. What,
I think
life
the
insurance?
expenses, are, they grow in these years.
Yeah.
Again, now you got kids.
Do we need life insurance at this stage?
There's
Is
so
this
many.
it?
You always need life insurance. I would tell you that the messy middle is the stage that it seems like we're both in. This can be, and it varies. It moves for different folks, but it's generally like, hey, you're having kids, you're starting out your family, and the days are long and the years are short. Life's coming at you 100 miles an hour from every angle.
Amen.
There's kid's sick, a car breaks down, there's job changes, there's promotions, there's things are happening, and it feels like, man, I've got all these plates spinning, like where do I go from here? I would tell you it's important to get things right early because you'll pop out of this zone, when you're 40, young 40s, maybe late 30s, it depends on your season. But you'll pop out, and before you know it, like, hey, if you were consistent and had things going automatically, you'll be drastically better off. So in today's day and age of, most of our checks from our employer are direct deposit. There's no reason you couldn't automatically, make some of these things a habit.
Right.
Whether it's investing in your 401k, investing in, some of these things outside, like a Roth IRA, an HSA. These are things that are within your control that you can just set automatically. And, like we'll have a couple months go by and we go, man, what happened? We just took the Christmas lights down. It felt like, now we're moving again. Like things are just happening quickly. It's important for all that stuff to be happening in the background.
Yeah.
That's good.
I would say, don't be afraid of the setbacks. We were talking about unexpected expenses. There's going to be things happen. It's important to have that emergency fund because there will be things that happen, especially in the messy middle. And I would tell you that the average first-time home buying age is actually 36. That might surprise you. I thought it was like young 20s, but really it's 36. So don't think, you're behind. Oh my goodness, I have to hurry up. Like, you're not running the race against the Joneses. You're running your own race.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good
The average age to start investing is 33. So it's important just to start, to get on a plan and start. Simple as that.
That's good. As far as in your messy middles, when your money, we've gotten out of debt in our young adult years, thank God. Now we're in the process of telling our soldiers where to go.
Yeah.
Now, how do I make money on my money in my messy middle years?
That's good. Yeah. So this will apply for really any years. Like once you get out of debt, you get your emergency fund. Now you're talking about assigning the money where to go. One thing that I would tell you is we are in a different era of traps all around you. And I know like there was always dumb investment ideas, since the beginning of time. But right now you go online, and I don't know if you guys see it, but I see it all the time. Like, oh man, I made all this money in Bitcoin. Man, I'm doing arbitrage. I'm living, in a van down by the river, like
selling digital resources.
Yeah, there's multi-level marketing everywhere. There's a lot of things that are just always out there.
Yep.
And I'm not telling you something's smart or dumb, but I am telling you this. I don't chase anything that I don't understand completely.
That's really good.
And that has returns that are outlandish. And what's outlandish? I would tell you like a standard return, like the standard stock market return from the beginning of time is about 10-11%, right around there. Somebody comes to me and tells me they have a 25% guaranteed return, I'm just running away.
Yeah.
And maybe they do for a time,
So-
but so is the stock market. 1 year it'll be 22%, was it last year, and then 1 year it'll be negative 9%, but it averages out.
Yep.
I like the analogy of it's like somebody playing with a yo-yo as they walk up a mountain. Like there's going to be ups and downs, but you're slowly
Steadily
heading up the
going up,
mountain.
yeah.
And so, if you chase a quick return, you'll regret it in the long run.
What would you say as far as investments on what you want for your return? So you said like stock markets is about 10%. Is that about what you want on return?
Yeah, I would tell you that first, where do you put your money? There's different places. Like it doesn't all have to be stocks. I think that I would take advantage of anything that's the government limits, because they limit it on purpose. So that is a health savings account. That's a Roth IRA. That's your 401k. Take advantage of anything that the government limits, because they know they're smart. So I just assume like, hey, the government is smart. They know they're going to limit me for a reason. I'm going to take advantage of those. Outside of that, I like to diversify a little bit. I think there's two major avenues. I think there's stocks and there's real estate. And I think those things I understand. I think the average person with some research can understand them. I also believe in, when you're investing in companies, this is these companies like Coca-Cola, DuPont, whatever. These companies have R&D departments. They're growing. They're adding value to the market. They're selling product. Real estate, that's returning money to you. That's an essential function it's providing, where people need shelter. Bitcoin or the commodities with like gold and silver, that's worth whatever someone downstream of you will pay for it. So that's why I don't chase that stuff. I do the tried and true, and I do a little bit here, a little bit there. I don't go all in with one thing. When we buy stocks, it's broadly diversified index funds. We don't, you can go play with money. Like, hey, we've bought a stock before, just having fun.
Yeah.
But I would say that needs to be less than 5% even of your net worth. It needs to be a part that if you lost it,
You're not crying about it.
if you light it on fire in the middle of your table, it's okay. It's not going to change your life, right? It's sad to me when I hear, and I've heard these stories of somebody, chasing a quick buck, Bitcoin. I think we all have heard, that was a big one. And they put, 30, 40, 50%, into these things and lose money. There's a lot of stuff like that. You'll hear a lot about, syndications, people basically pooling money and saying, hey, I know a guy, he's pulling money together and we're going to go, invest in this syndication. And I'm not even saying that person's, a crook or anything like that. I'm saying wait until that's the amount of money that's negligible in your life. Yeah. Not something that you have to check in on every week and go, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Did this person run off on me?
Right. I want to highlight, you said the word diversify, which I think is a really smart thing for, as you're looking for that margin of money of like, hey, we have this to invest, diversify your assets. Two things also in this messy middle. One, I think, have mentors that you can talk openly about numbers. We have a couple that we go to dinner with about once a year, and we talk numbers. Yeah, and you don't really do that with other people. Yeah. And it's so good that these are people we admire. Mm-hmm. They're 10 years older than us. Financially, we want to be where they are.
Next stage.
For the next stage. And we just share like, this is so what we made. This is, and they just
open and transparent with them.
It's such a great conversation. So I'd say like, find people who you can have those conversations with.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And I would tell you like, hey, that's not the only people like we talk to, but it's important to have somebody that is where you want to be. Yeah. And they're our mentor also with like with parenting and stuff. We ask them about schooling. Right. We ask them different work-life balance things. But so it's not all like, where do I put my money?
Right.
But it's very much like, hey, you've been here. This isn't something you're not comfortable with.
Right.
It's important to have that relationship. Yeah.
One more thing from the messy middles before we move on is make sure this is the season where you establish your estate planning. Like make sure that, the will is set up. who's getting the money, where is it going to the kids, how is it getting toward the kids. I mean, we could do a whole nother episode on how Michael set up our estate planning for our kids, but
I gamified it basically.
Yeah, it's a wild labyrinth, but have that, like, get that in order. There's so many places to get that established. Make that on the to-do list.
That's good. And
it's an act of love.
Division amongst
it's an act of love though, not to put that burden on your family to figure out. And I tell you, it's such a tragedy when you hear like, hey, a couple dies in a plane crash going on vacation. So I remember my parents said when they went on their first missions trip without the kids, they went and got this done because they were like, man, what happens?
Yeah.
You hate to, but life is short.
That's reality,
even if you live a long and happy life, our time here is limited, and not addressing the elephant in the room of death, that's only going to hurt the people that come after you.
Right. Speaking of limited time, we want to talk about what to do, like pre-retirement, retirement years, and beyond.
Yeah, and before we get to that, though, I think we have to also address, because with young adults, 20s, 30s, 40s, kids are in the scene. When do you start saving for kids? Do you save for your kids? Should you be saving for college, for weddings? On top of it, like, we're talking about a lot of things, right, that can overwhelm people.
Yeah.
And so what do you have to say to that?
I have a few things I could say about that. One is, prepaid future expenses.
Yeah.
That happens after you've done what I was highlighting earlier, is basically 25% of your income. It's going into saving and investments. Because I can tell you, two things in finance that you really want to see happen. One is that your kids become successful adults that don't need economic outpatient care. They don't need their parent. At some point they launch and they're sustaining adults on their own. Another thing that you want is you don't want to become a burden in your retirement years. There's no retirement loan. There is a student loan, right? So keep that in mind. Let's get our stuff cleaned up. Then you move into investing. Then you move into prepaying future expenses. Future expense could be their college. Like we invest in 529s for the kids. That's a tax incentivized way of investing into it. I think that's an important one. Mm-hmm. We also are well aware that, we have kids, they're going to get married. And we have a goal of paying for our daughter's wedding. We have goals of helping our children, not taking away their financial, struggle or financial, hustle in their story, but being able to help them along the journey. What I was calling in the last episode, a little bit of the American dream. Like, I don't want them to have the same struggle that I had.
Of course.
I want them to feel the hustle and to want something more. Yeah. But hey, we want to be able to give them a leg up, to go to the next level.
Of course.
So I think I answered that.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Do you want to move on to pre-retirement years?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're calling these years right after the messy middle. For a lot of folks, this is your 40s all the way up through, could be your early 60s, or you talk a lot now. People are talking about early retirement. So this could be early 50s, mid 50s. This is a part where I think it's really, really important to get intentional. Whether it's with your time, any of your resources, make sure that you don't maintain, you're just coming out of this messy middle stage, right? Everybody now knows how to go to the bathroom on their own. They don't throw crackers everywhere. You can finally breathe. You can finally go on a vacation and maybe let them go wander out and enjoy yourself at a dinner. It's important to soak in the moments. I think right now you're entering in what should be or could be your peak earning years.
Yeah.
If you've been doing everything right, if you've been on a plan, now you're starting to see the harvest a little bit.
You're
starting to see, the game get easier. I was talking earlier about, you're on this journey up this hill, and I would tell you, you need to sprint gazelle intensity to get out of the debt. But then also, if you could just crest over into the investing and see what it's like for your money to make money for you, and for you to get to a point where it gets easier, it's such a breath of fresh air. No one ever shared with me all the way through, I think, the very end of college, a compound interest like calculator, and showed me that, hey, if you had $100,000 and it made you 10% in 1 year, that's 110. You just made $10,000. And I'm like, man, I did nothing. The next year it makes 11. So you're like, man, 2 years, that made me $21,000. That's a Honda, you know? So I go, that's pretty cool. Well, imagine over time and more time and more time, what that ends up being. And if you can wait, you know, like we were talking about, like, you know, buying a car. I said, man, I would love for my money to buy that car for me. And then it's like, then I have the car plus the original money, and then that money's growing. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you, it was taboo. I grew up in the church, and it was something that I never really had a talk about. It was always about frugality and saving, but it was never a lot of investing, like where to go with your money. And I think it's such a key that it's okay and it's not taboo to go become wealthy. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I personally think it's okay. Like, hey, the more we make, the more we give, personally. And I think corporately, that's what we should all be looking at. And it's okay to be successful. I grew up and I was a little, it was a little bit like, you know, you would say, man, those rich kids, you know, you would think, you know, they're all stuck up. Maybe a lot of them were, but maybe a lot of them weren't. And it's like, hey, you grew up and you just, you kind of generalize, you know, the whole class of, well, that's not for us, because that means that, you know, you're not living like Mother Teresa, so that means you're not holy. And I don't think that was the way we were supposed to live.
No, that's good. And we know that. I mean, biblically, it's the love of money being the root of all kinds of evil. You know, it's not money itself.
Right.
And the call is a lot more on the stewardship factor, like you're talking about. So I'm for that. I think what you're saying is right on.
And remember, you know, I said this earlier, but, you know, giving plays such an important role. It is, and I want to highlight it one more time, it is the one true way I've seen that I can really test my heart, in that I'm content, I'm great, I'm happy with what I have, and I have extra. And I want to see that go do something outside of, you know, what I can do on my own. And, you know, not all of us were called to go be a missionary around the world. Some of us were called to help fund that stuff.
Right.
And I think both of them have a very important purpose. Outside of that, I would tell you that there's another part that, you know, we were talking about 25% of your income and doing all this stuff that the government limits. So you got a lot of money in pre-tax, you got money in Roth. It's also important to think about in this stage, the pre-retirement stage, your after-tax, which is a brokerage account. That's money that's going to be, you know, readily accessible. And it's going to give you options, you know, later in life. Like this is the account that you're probably going to pay for the wedding out of. This is the account that you can immediately grab money and pay for the car. Or, you know, if you weren't in a 529, this is the account that you can go get the money to pay for some college. So it's important to focus. Some people call it a 3-bucket strategy, to focus on each one of those buckets: after tax, pre-tax, and post-tax, tax-free money. So
Cool. Wow.
Do we move on to the last stage?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Last stage, retirement years. I mean, not to put you to sleep. If you're in the gym working out, grab a bigger dumbbell. Here we go. Just a couple things to focus on would be legacy planning. I think Shay hit the estate stuff. You know, there's Roth conversions and all these other nuances. But I think just one thing is, this is where you think about, what was my time on earth, you know, about? Where do I want it? Where do I want to send, you know, my resources out to? And it's not just money, it's time. I've seen a lot of joy in people that I see just show up in that foyer, you know, every Sunday, and they're in their retirement years and they're investing their time into the church, into people, and to people like me. You know, I had a lot of people that I really respected growing up that in their retirement years had margin on their time, had margin on their finances, you know, sponsor a kid to go on a mission trip to New York City. You know, that was impactful in my life.
Absolutely.
And so just think about those things as we close up. You know, it's important to have that goal.
Man, that's great perspective. I love it. That's awesome. Well, this was a lot. Listeners,
this is a lot.
Take it in.
There's maybe some terms that, you know, like you're thinking like Roth conversions.
No shame if you need to go Google stuff.
Google it.
I love Roth conversions. Like, we didn't get into tax loss harvesting and donor advised funds.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
When Michael and I go on road trips and it's just the two of us, he'll put on like a financial podcast and I'm like, are you kidding me? And it just... But I'm starting to hear these, terms more and
yeah.
more. He's talking to me about them. So, like, the more you familiarize yourself with these terms, the better off you're going to be. So, if there was a term in there like a Roth conversion, go look it up. Like, this is important to know.
I think sometimes, at least in our season, it's almost like I was saying earlier, you're of age, so you're expected to know. And so even when it comes to these terms, sometimes we would,
Right.
I mean, but we've grown a little bit. We're closer to 30. But so now not quite as much. But a few years ago, even you feel dumb to ask the questions to the older people,
Right.
to the people who have gone through this and who
Right.
have the experience. But I would just say, like, to us a couple years ago, like, don't be scared to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Ask the dumb questions.
Like, what is the offset? Okay, you look dumb, which you really don't, because they were probably the same way when they were your age.
Right.
Or, you continue in ways you're making assumptions and stuff like that, and you didn't really learn from it. So,
Right.
I tell people at work, there's an actual term called dumb doctor deals. It's where doctors just literally throw away their money at somebody that came in and pitched them on something. The smartest amongst us, can throw their money away because it's something that you don't focus on. And pride gets in the way of saving and doing things the right way.
Right.
And I would tell you, don't let your pride get in the way of going back and saying, hey, I may not know squat about personal finance. Let's go look it up. And it's a journey that we've gone on together.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of happiness. I know I trap her in the car sometimes and make her listen to things, but I do it kind of just being funny. But I think it's a journey that it's like part of life.
That's
and
awesome.
it can unlock so many things,
And the
Yeah.
biggest thing I think is just it brings peace.
brings
It
peace.
brings
The longer
peace.
you ignore it and you don't address it, I mean, like you've described in these
And real
scriptures,
freedom.
it lingers in it.
And maybe a boat one day.
Hey,
It doesn't buy happiness, but it can't buy you a boat.
that's all.
Oh, very cool. Thanks, honey.
Yeah.
Really
This is great,
appreciate
Mike.
it.
Yeah,
did
yeah.
good.
I
Well,
hope somebody got something out of this.
Oh no, for
So-
sure, no
with
doubt
a
they
special
did.
guest, we always like to end with a surprise question.
Yeah, bring it on.
What's your favorite thing being married to me?
I mean, there's so many.
Crickets.
That's
There's so
good.
many, Charles.
good.
There's so many. How can I name just one?
Oh yeah,
How can I name just one? I would
All right,
say
all right. Well, what about?
I got an
what's-
answer.
Oh.
I'm ready.
Oh, okay.
I think my favorite thing, I'm going to answer it for where we are now in this season, is seeing you be just a wonderful mother.
Oh,
And that's been
thanks.
really, really cool.
sweet.
I mean, I've known Shay since we were in high school. Like, seeing this stage of life on Shay has been really, really rewarding. And it's fun to do life together, Yeah.
Thank
That
you.
was very sweet.
sweet. You're invited back. Oh,
Oh
thank
man,
you.
well, Mike, thanks so much, man. You really blessed a lot of us by sharing this. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Share it, and hey, remember the church is here for you too. We're all here for you. Let's do this together on this
Yeah.
financial journey. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya.